Oh. Hey Alice. I greeted as I opened the door to see our neighbor. Hey, Motoko. So yeah. You had time to think about that offer? She asked, and I blinked and rubbed my head. I felt like I was still pulling blood out of my knuckles despite a shower. Yeah, I thought about it. Yeah. I said despite not having thought about it at all. I'd been focused on grinding skills this week, and then our scheduled Section 9 work. So, hey. We have a meeting tonight. Just to play some songs and get some things worked out for a gig. Figured I'd invite you. Did your band figure out the problems you guys were having? Not exactly. She said, and I looked her up and down and winced. I'm not exactly looking. I know. Listen. Come play with us, some of our songs, some of yours. We're looking for another, for the gig I mentioned, but it's not a forced thing. Just come play. See if you fit. I ran my hand through my hair. It had been a stressful day. I had gotten shot after all. I really could use a distraction. All right, fine, let me grab my guitar. Nova. She cheered out, and I had a feeling she was banking on me for more than just a one-night jam session. I shrugged and grabbed my stuff, before meeting her at the door and following her down. I ended up going with her, in her little van, which wasn't the most comfortable ride, but I didn't have room in the Quadra for her equipment and mine. She made pretty shit small talk as she drove, mostly about June to my amusement. But I wasn't really interested in that, so I decided to get to the point. So what's the deal with your band? You remember Carmen? Nope. I answered back, and she snorted. He was the lead guitarist of VH. That gig we did to help him out with his Nicola song? Well, afterwards he bailed on us. I've been trying to get him to stick around at least long enough to get a replacement, because we had gigs coming up and we need someone. But he refused, and now you are desperate to find someone that can play. She was quiet for a while, but as we stopped at a red light behind a few trucks, their brake lights lighting up the van's cab, she turned to me. That's right. I've dedicated everything to be a musician. To get VH going, to try and do something. So I'm willing to try anything. So please. Just jam with us. See if you like it, and maybe do a gig or two. No contract shit, we're street rockers, but we need someone until we get a replacement. I'm not really the band type. Maybe not, but there are eddies in it, and more. She offered, and the light changed, so she focused on driving instead of answering my raised eyebrow. What was more about being in a band? We didn't go to Denny's place. Which made me remember how expensive it was supposed to be. Had Hiromi tricked me into spending lots of eddies for something I didn't really need? I decided I would try to remember to ask her about that later, but we were meeting up in a storage unit of all things. It was one similar to the Tiger Claw place we had used when we did the yacht gig, but closer to our current apartments. I had a feeling it was something Fujimura, Alice's uncle, had set up for her. But we parked, and as I stepped out I noticed the unit was open, and I guess it was cold enough being winter, that it wasn't that big a deal. Yo. I got us a temp. Alice called out, and I rolled my eyes at her as she called out, waving her hands up in the air. Finally. Hell yeah. I looked at the other two. I recognized both men from when I saw VH play, and when we went to Denny's for the first time, but I had never spoken to either of them. All right everyone, this is Motoko, she plays guitar and? Alice looked at me, and I just blinked. Anything really? I confirmed and got a blank look but a nod from her at that. And can cover pretty much anything. Yeah? Well, I got some things that I could enjoy if I was off the drums. One of the guys called out and then looked me over, and I could see his lips quirk up. Well damn, Alice. Where'd you get this one? Some animal convention? Fuck off, Klein, you ass. Be nice. Motoko does merc work. Alice offered, but she glanced at me, and then down as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't exactly blowing anyone away with my massive chest, so I knew it was my well-defined abs stretching my leotard. I hadn't gone to get them updated again after hitting body 10, so the leotards were a bit tight. I work out. I offered blandly. Yeah, no shit. You want to drum? Sure, I could use some stress relief. I offered, and that was that. Sticks handed over and I spun them with the same dexterity I used while cutting gonks into pieces. Yeah, I could do this. I hadn't done much drums, mostly sticking to electronics. What could I do? Well, I did like Dave Grohl. I settled into the seat and checked the equipment as the band got together. You know our songs? Klein asked as he switched over to a guitar. Violent Hemorrhage? I heard you guys live once. Alright, then we definitely played Spilled Blood. You good? Should be, I said with faux casualness, and before they could even start playing the first strings I started in on the drum intro, much to their surprise. I had to play it twice before they caught up and started playing. And then I just lost myself in the tune. I remember the rhythm, had it memorized in my brain thanks to perfect musical memory. It wasn't exactly a thrilling song to play, but I kept it going even when the other band mates flubbed things, or Alice made me cringe from her singing. It was all right. It was therapeutic to smash the drums. I was even getting into it, before the other guy suddenly stopped with a curse. Fucking hell, Jared. Why'd you stop? 'Cause you keep fucking it up. He yelled at Alice, who cursed him right back, and I relaxed and settled back a bit. Looking around, I noticed a SCSM across the way, and I was thirsty. I headed over and no one noticed me, and then got back while they were still arguing. Friction in the band, huh? That's fair, but I wasn't here to fucking listen to it. I could play some Nirvana, but I had done most of those myself. Then I remembered another band that I liked. Hair, that could work. The song started in my head, and I just took on the drummer. Dave was a legend, and I was just a copycat, but hopefully I could make the sound right. No One Knows was a Queens of the Stone Age song. Definitely a fun band, and the song was a really interesting rock song. So I waited, and ignoring the gonks arguing about stupid shit, I just started. Feeling a smile come over my face as I let myself enjoy the song in my head. I hadn't heard it in over a year after all, but as I played it was like listening to it back. Only when I finished it did I pay any attention to the band, who to my surprise had picked up their instruments and played along. Badly, but they had tried their own additions to the beat. Nice. Klein offered me as the song finished. Okay, you're the better drummer. What was that beat? Here, I'll show you. I have no idea what the official name of it would be. It's a 3-beat with a delayed 4th. Here. I showed it slowed down to the drummer, and soon we swapped spots as he started tinkering with it. Well, if he was going to try and drum it. Mind if I sing? I asked Alice, and she blinked before hesitating and shaking her head. This an actual song? Yeah, it's called No One Knows. I mean, unless you guys want to play something else. Nah, fuck that. I'm sick of our shit anyways. Let's hear it. Jared called as he grabbed his bass, and I nodded. Alice picked up a guitar and I grabbed mine, and I started. Yeah, follow this beat for the first half. I instructed Jared, and then walked to Alice. Can you do this? I offered, and she nodded with a bit of hesitation. And then once I got them all synced up, I started singing. We got some rules to follow, that and this, these and those. I started, and despite multiple stops soon we were actually jamming. They weren't terrible musicians, they were just terrible songwriters, I decided. Alice, I noticed, wasn't very happy about me singing, so I shrugged and walked over to her, standing in front of her, as we did a restart, and this time I played the guitar and she hesitated, before starting the song herself. Her version was more electronic, her cyberware picking up, but that was fine. It was about having fun anyways. Dash. Fuck Alice, where'd you find this one? Hey Motoko, right? Fucking join the band, no scop you rock girl. Thanks. I'm not sure, I'm really a band type though. I offered, waving my hands a bit. Or fuck. Alice. You know her. Tell her she has to do some gigs with us. She's a monster. Jared demanded, and Alice still looked a little irritated at my performance, but at the same time, she knew how skilled I was, and was swallowing it down, not letting it influence her. Motoko, we have a gig, Saturday, and we need another member. Please. I definitely still hesitated even with the begging. Listen, I'm just not that interested. How about a trade then? Klein offered, and I looked over as he walked to a section of the garage that had a bunch of junk stacked up. Old equipment that was dusty and abandoned, and I was about to make some sarcastic comment about it when Klein pulled out something that actually had me sit up. Noticed your guitar is store slop, it's alright for minor shit, but it's not gonna serve. And that's supposed to be better? I asked, looking at the incredibly expensive piece of trash. The guitar was broken. Which was a real shame, because it was a Delusia Orphean. The color wasn't to my liking, a sort of orange, but that was the same type of guitar that Johnny used. Old, retro, but solid, a real playing guitar. Hey, even jacked up, this thing is worth Eddie's. Carmen's. He wrecked it when he left the band. The fuck he do that for? I asked as I walked over and took the damaged axe. Looks like he tried to smash it, but the neck was strong enough to take it. Chipped the fuck out of the body though, and the bridge was bent in. Did he hit it against something? I looked it over, the ports were fucked too, 2 of them were bent in, would need a full replacement. He just didn't need it anymore. Alice offered bitterly, there was more to the story, but that didn't matter to me. Because the fact was, while it was damaged, I could replace it. Probably. How much are these things normally worth? A preem good condition one? $5,000, easy. Alice offered and I blinked, looked at the guitar in my hands. That's all? I thought back to my guitar that I bought and winced as I realized I hadn't really bought anything good. Just a cheap off the rack. Sure, I made it work, I had the skill thanks to Rockaboy to tune it and set it up right, but I could do better with better equipment. All right. I'll take this as payment then. You said the gig was this weekend? I asked and Alice nodded while Klein looked pleased with himself. That's right, kid. Now we'll need to get our set list going. Hey you slackers, let's play some music. We need to make sure our new guitarist knows what to do. I rolled my eyes at the drummer's words, but set the broken guitar to the side and picked up my own. Time to make sure I know all the Violent Hemorrhage songs. Bleg. Dash. That's amazing. Hiromi cheered to me, as I informed her about the new update. It's okay. I'm mostly getting paid in an old guitar that I really didn't need, but I figured it was. It was enough to make me do it. It was hard to admit that I could have just turned around and bought a brand new guitar no problem for just $5,000. But I was going to fix this guitar, it would be a good week project while I prepped for the gig, and it was a good enough excuse. Maybe I needed the excuse to get up on stage again. At least this time I was just playing some garbage songs, and not ones that I have any real emotional investment in. That's no good. Make sure they are paying you eddies as well. I'll talk to them if I have to, as your manager. Thanks Hiromi, I know you got my back. Anyway, you have school right? Yeah, I'm getting ready for it now. She muttered darkly, and I looked out the window to see the bright California sun glaring down on us. All right, how about we meet for lunch then? Yes. I'll see you then. I'll see you then. I confirmed, and the call ended. I guess I should go get this guitar fixed up then. I got dressed noting that June was still passed out, it was early for him though. A quick stop on the way out to grab some food and I went looking for a shop. The first place I stopped in was the shop I bought my original guitar from. It only took me pulling out the guitar before the old man took one look at it and shook his head. "You can't just go to some scop seller like this place for a delusia, you gonk," he said quietly but firmly, glaring at me, over the top of the guitar. "Damaging a fucking delusia. Brats these days. That thing needs real replacement parts you won't find in this sort of place," he whispered, his face locked on me, but I could tell he was keeping his boss in his periphery. "Any idea where I could go to get replacement parts?" "PFFT. Course I do. Can't tell you though," he offered, and I smirked as I walked over and grabbed 3 shitty albums off the side of the wall. "Course not, only paying customers, am I right?" "Hair." He finally cracked a smile and he rang me up, and only as I was leaving did I get a message from the grumpy old man. "Martin, time machine. Near Senate and Market, Glen." Well, I guess I knew where to go. A quick jump into the Quadra and I was across town, checking out Haywood, and finally I found it. A corner store with a big neon strip going around the building. Time machine, huh? I wondered, there was something familiar about this place. Was it a game location? I honestly didn't remember, and so took a parking spot and stepped inside. Oh wow. This was a high-end shop. I glanced around and noticed that despite being a much more expensive sort of music shop, the guitars on the walls were the same sort of scop I'd find in the other shop. But he said I should come here? I walked up to the counter, and a moment later a woman with an unfortunate haircut noticed me and sauntered over. "What can I get ya?" "Oh shit, who wrecked the delusia?" "The former owner." I answered her question as she was looking at the guitar I had settled onto the counter. "I'm looking for some replacement parts to fix her up. The bridge is wrecked, and there." "Yeah, I see it. Smashed it hard by the looks of it, the frets look good, the neck isn't damaged." She started to mutter and I relaxed. She knew what she was talking about. Going through the guitar and cataloging everything. "It's gonna be expensive to repair this. At least a month to do it, I'm backlogged." "I can do the repairs, just need the parts," I answered, and she looked at me like she wanted to argue. "Yeah, all right. Just don't break it. If you think you can't handle something, just hand it over." "I can do it. Thanks though," I answered back, because I wasn't going to take her concern about the expensive guitar against her. "All right, let me grab what you need. You got the eddies?" "I have the eddies." I waved her off, and she nodded. A few minutes later she came out of the back room, which I noticed as she opened the door was full of much more expensive guitars than what was out here. Now I understood. Sell the scop to normal rockers, and keep the expensive stuff safe. I took the parts, checked them over, my Kiroshi scanning the parts confirmed they were good, and a few checks verified even that. "Preem. Thanks, Choom." "Sure, kid. Remember, bring it in if you can't handle it. Those delusia are classics." I waved her off and headed out of the shop. Pulling the bridge out of the guitar, I winced at how much damage it had taken. Luckily, the internals were easy enough to fix, and I had the replacements. Slowly I started putting the expensive guitar back together. Piece by piece. I laughed as almost instantly I got a crafting alert. I hummed some old songs as I worked, using some tools, making sure the internals still worked. With the bridge out, I started replacing the connectors that were broken, unscrewing the section, and then pulling out the 2 that were damaged, and putting the new ends on. Slowly it all came back together. A guitar, no matter how expensive, had nothing on the complicated internals of a Tashikoma. And then I put the new bridge into place, and restrung the guitar. Looking it over, I nodded. It still looks a bit rough. The body was chipped, and the color was faded. Also, it wasn't a color I really liked. I ran my fingers over it, the sensitive pads letting me feel all the indents and damage. Repainting it wouldn't be hard. I sighed, and started dismantling the entire thing. I'd have to do a full restore on this thing, yo. I greeted the group of classy Arasaka students all wearing their fancy uniforms as I walked up. Motoko. Hiromi cheered, her previous flat look shifting into the smile I was so familiar with. Hey Hiromi. Hey David. How are you? I asked. The boy had been standing beside Hiromi. Who is this trash? Answered another boy instead, surprising me. I looked over and... Wow, that's a shitty haircut. You should fire your hairdresser. I said instantly, before I could think on it, and then I blinked. Wait, wasn't that David's bully? Katsu? Katsu. See Katsuo, even someone off the street instantly knows your haircut is shit. Hiromi said, and I could see the boy's face twitch as rage ran over his features. Shut your mouth, Mitsunashi. You dumb whore. The ONL. He was cut off as I stepped forward and suddenly he was lifted off his feet. Apologize. I demanded simply, my voice calm as I held the boy by his jacket's lapels. Why let go of me, you street bitch? Do you have any idea who I am? He argued and I could see his chums, two stooges that previously had his back, had stepped back. Hair. Scaredy cats. A moment later he lashed out. Slow, weak. I ducked his punch, if you could call it that, and dropped him, grabbing his wrist and twisted. When I had his arm held behind his back, I reached out and grabbed him by his shitty bowl-cut mullet thing. Then I forced him to stare right into Hiromi's face. Apologize to Hiromi for calling her a whore. That was rude. I said simply, and Hiromi looked tied between wanting to stop me and wanting to egg me on. In the end, I didn't get what I wanted, as two men dressed in Arasaka suits stepped forward from the building. Damn it. They approached calmly, showing no rush, but also complete intent. I caught them quickly thanks to my karoshi, but while Katsuo was hissing and cussing me out, he didn't notice until everyone else turned to the two men. Let him go. I was threatened, and I made no move to release the brat, who now noticed he had saviors. Kill this street rat. Get her filthy hands off me. Katsuo yelled, and I noticed his friends had come back forward looking ready to help by looming menacingly. I'm sure. But the two guards had all my attention. Wait. Hiromi called out and leapt forward, getting between me and them. This is my bodyguard, she was defending me. So this matter is resolved. Motoko, release Katsuo. I did so and he stumbled forward for a moment before rising up. Ms. Mitsunashi. There is to be no problems on Arasaka Tower property. I understand. I believe the issue is resolved. The two men looked from Hiromi to me, and I could see it in their posture. Both had either cyberware or glasses hiding their eyes, but they were thinking of making something of it. But then as they looked at me, and scanned me, suddenly they shifted and nodded. Very well. And both turned to walk away. I blinked, actually surprised. I expected there to be... Wait. I am Katsuo Tanaka. I demand you to do something. Or my father will hear of this. He said, not quite shrieking, but it was close. The matter is resolved. One of the guards said, and I continued to be surprised. Ha. Well, since that's been resolved. Let's go, Motoko. Hiromi said with a fake smile on her face as she ignored Katsuo, who was looking at the retreating backs of the guards with real anger. I followed along, and stopped when David was still just standing there, under the three gonks' glares. David. Let's go, Chum. I said, and he twitched a bit at his name, but decided to walk after us. I didn't really intend for David to come. Hiromi whispered to me, and I just smiled at her. Can't just leave him there. I think Katsuo was going to start screaming. Nah, he's full of hot air, and his dad doesn't really care that much. Not that it stops him from name-dropping him whenever he can. Hiromi spoke, but I shrugged, turning to David, who was walking behind us with hesitant steps. Hungry? Hiromi and I were going to get some lunch. Ah. I could eat. That taller boy offered a bit awkwardly. Preem. Let's find something. My treat. Then I can definitely eat. He said almost too quickly, and I chuckled as I turned and started searching for food. So those guards didn't shoot me. Of course they didn't. Hiromi argued as we settled around a bench in the little park area to eat. Yeah, it's weird. David offered, and I smiled, as at least one of the people that go to Arasaka Academy understands exactly how untrustworthy Arasaka is. It's not. They scanned me and decided to leave me alone, which is a bit weird. I offered as I took a bite of my lunch. Maybe your counter intel. Contact. V? I asked suddenly and blinked. That was certainly possible, so I decided to find out. Motoko, hey, just had a minor run-in with some Arasaka security outside the tower. They scanned me and decided to drop it. Was that you? I blinked away the text I just sent to V, and looked over at our newest guest. How's work been, David? Making eddies? Some. Not so much recently, things have been slow. You are doing any more ghost BDs? Oh. I realized at that, it had been a while since I've bothered to record any BDs that I would actually want to hand off. The fact was, most of the gigs I had done recently had been the TC and 6th Street ones, or when Kangtao attacked us, and fact was, I didn't want to sell a BD of me hitting a corp. That just ran too much risk of the BDs being taken as an insult, or something. I'll have to prep some more. I hadn't really been thinking about them. Me either. Hiromi added with a shrug. Business has been good, so I wasn't pushing you for more. Maybe our next gig then. I decided, and Hiromi nodded, looking happy as ever at the idea we might make more eddies. Preem. David whispered a bit breathily, and then I looked to David. He might go a bit overboard with the Sandy, but he had become an acceptable solo. His experience had shown through in a lot of ways. Should I try to bring him in? I'm sure Rebecca would thank me. Well, maybe. There was no telling if Rebecca would have the same thoughts about him she had in the anime. People were funny like that. But then I shook it off. I wasn't really looking to hire just another solo to Section 9. I'd be more likely to try and hire Lucy if anything. Another netrunner would be nice. Sorry, David, if you want to be an edgerunner, it won't be because of me, or a Sandy this time. But I did plan on making sure Gloria survived. I'd already decided to do that much in exchange for making sure that Sandy ended up in my hands. I hummed a little, thinking on it. Motoko? Just thinking about what day it is. I answered Hiromi's question. It would happen in the next couple months at least. I'd have to set up a few things to make sure I didn't miss it. Luckily it was pretty unlikely anything I had done would change what's-his-face from being the test dummy for the prototype Sandy that would drive him to cyberpsychosis. All I would have to do is set up some demons to alert me for specific cyberpsycho attacks, and maybe a camera or two right here in city center. That would be enough. I just have to be there before Gloria makes a call to Maine to plan to sell it off. I hummed, feeling a smile cross my lips as I imagined having such a Nova piece of tech. I want it to be perfect. And that might just be the first big step towards getting there. What are you doing? June asked as he got home, and I looked up from the living room table where I was watching paint dry. The most boring thing in the world. Welcome home, June-ni. He responded with a suspicious noise as he entered the apartment and started getting comfortable, throwing his jacket over the back of the couch and heading for the fridge. What? You don't usually call me June-ni anymore. Are you trying to butter me up for something? PFFT. I responded, breaking into snickers at his words. No, I'm good. I just felt like it was right. I talked to Alice. Oh yeah? He asked, suddenly interested as he poked his head out of the fridge. Did a jam session with her and her band last night. They were nice enough, they invited me to play with them on their gig this weekend. They needed a temp. Did you say yes? You should say yes, he said, ignoring the fridge and hurrying over. Gonk. I already said I would, they paid me in a nice guitar. I explained, waving at the Orpheon. It was broken, so I've been fixing it all day. I explained, and June was suddenly there, grabbing me up and lifting me off the couch. Motoko. Hey! Idiot. Watch the guitar. I growled as he spun me around. If he smashed me into the guitar after I just spent all this time fixing it, I was going to be pissed. You are gonna be an awesome rocker boy. Shut up. Alice's band sucks, and so do you. I'm just doing it because I figured I might as well. Idiot. I'm so happy. When is the gig? I want to come? Uck, yeah, I know. I'm sure Alice would have invited you anyways. I grumbled, and June finally let me down as I stood on the couch glaring at June for once actually being almost as tall as him. I'll come to see you play, he assured me with a big goofy, stupid, idiot, gonk smile. Do what you want. Now get out of the way, the paint is still drying. I told him and made sure he wasn't touching the guitar with his legs or something. Finally that night I put the guitar back together and hooked it up to the amp. The guitar was newly painted. I smirked at the colors. White and blue, it's a tatchy guitar. I whispered to myself so June wouldn't hear and giggled at the thought. But then I took a breath and slowly adjusted the volume and the tone knobs, altering the sound a bit as I started strumming. A few more adjustments, and I had the sound as I wanted for the song I was going to play, and then started up Never Fade Away. I made it halfway through the song before stopping and making some more adjustments. The pickups on the treble side were a bit low, so I adjusted them and went back to it. The smooth sound of Samurai came out and I couldn't help but get drawn into the song, singing along softly as I played and gave the repaired guitar a bit of a chance to stretch its legs. Yep. Sounds good. I muttered, looking at the guitar, and I couldn't help but be a little irritated at how much better the sound was. I'd have to redo a ton of songs now. Grumbling, I rose up and stretched. Now I had some other work to do. I headed into my room, and pulled up my CAD program and got to work on another project I had put on the back burner. My Tachikoma had proven itself on a gig, and I needed to keep improving them, and getting them ready. Wheels. I had started the project to make the Tachikoma more mobile, but had gotten sidetracked with all the shit that kept happening. So I settled in and started adjusting the design. The same problem hit me though. The Tachikoma was already too compact. I couldn't fit more things into the legs without removing functionality that was already there. At least not yet. I hadn't had any idea how to get around the problem, but that had been a while ago. I had weeks to sleep on it, and I came up with an idea. I started work on a new device. A battery pack, a small electric motor and a wheel. And a place for the Tachikoma to lock its feet in, so that it could drive around, equipping the wheels, or losing them as needed. Detachable wheel modules. I hummed, pleased with the idea as I went to work. I would need to do some slight modification on the grippers of the Tachikoma, but after that, I could just manufacture the wheels and the Tachi would have some temporary mobility. I hummed some more as I went to work, ignoring the soft drip of alerts that came through as I worked. Okay, so test 1 on the Tachikoma wheel extensions. I whispered to myself as I placed the Tachikoma on the floor of the living room, and then settled in cross-legged behind it. With a nudge I prompted the Tachikoma to use the newly installed hardware and software drivers, and a moment later the quickly noise of tiny engines activated and the Tachikoma started rolling forward. Then about 5 seconds after that the engines went to absolutely max RPM and the Tachikoma shot off, losing control of the torque, and suddenly back wheels shot out from under the poor thing and it flipped onto its back. I stared at it. It stared at everything, its tiny little optic looking around as the wheels continued buzzing at max speed. I quickly ordered it to stop, before it burned out the motors, and pulled up the laptop. going to have to work on that. Dash? No, that's the fridge. Well, got that dent buffed out. Okay, let's Trino slow down, that's the shrine. Phew. Nothing was broken. Dash. Okay. Trial 19. I've adjusted the Tachikoma's internal speedometer, which isn't something it even had before, but now that it can internalize how fast it's going, it should work. I set the Tachikoma down and it wheeled forward looking around, then it started moving not nearly as fast as before, but soon enough it was driving around the apartment, and after a minute of it not smashing into anything I relaxed. And then winced as it took a turn going full speed without bothering to brake or slow down. The Tachikoma needed driving lessons. Actually, that was doable. I scooped up the Tachikoma and hurried over to the entertainment system. There was something here. Malcolm and Itchy had played a racing game. I quickly paid the eddies for the subscription to the racing game, and set up an account. Normally it was a VR game, and the Tachikoma wouldn't really interact with that, right? But I was a netrunner. Grabbing my laptop, I started programming a VR emulation program for the Tachikoma. Which wasn't hard. I was already dropping them into my net lobby, so this was just an emulation of that. I did have to set up the laptop to run the emulation though, as the Tachikoma's hardware wasn't strong enough on its own. I still needed to get it some upgrades. Shaking that off, I set it up so the Tachikoma was dropped into the VR, and did a few clicks. The game had a race practice sim. So I set it up, and added some code so the Tachikoma would know how to restart the practice. With that, I looked at the laptop where an emulation of the VR was displaying and watched as the Tachikoma just sat there in its little beat-up Thornton Galena starter car. The ghostly race instructor was already off, taking clean racing lines as it disappeared. But the Tachikoma just sat there. I reached over and hit the gas for a second, and the car jerked forward, and the Tachikoma finally reacted. The virtual wheel turned all the way around and it hit the gas. I watched as the Tachikoma spun in circles for a minute before realizing it wasn't quite understanding the instructions. I reset the track and told it to follow the ghost. It sort of started out, and then fumbled into a wall. But it was learning now. Rising up, I stretched, enjoying the feeling of the muscles between my shoulders extending out. Time to get some lunch.